Absolutely. Do they require administrative competence? Completely. Everyone has a role to play in this. And so it is a democratic exercise that has a lot of moving parts. Kosovo, I think, is on its way, and I think ultimately it will be a democratic exercise, not when the OSCE says it is. God bless them. It will be a democratic exercise when the people of Kosovo feel that they have elected a government that has earned, in which the process earned their confidence, your confidence. That's democratic.
Thank you. Anyone has a question from the students or professors? Please.
You were talking earlier about MPs. Now, I knew a few of the MPs in the earlier government, one of them being my mother herself. And we lived in England. We've seen how MPs can work and how they can affect the country, in fact. But my mother, working as an MP for Kosovo, saw fit to leave it because it just wasn't having any aid to our community at the moment. So even if we did know who the MPs are or what they're doing, they just don't have that great effect in Kosovo at the moment. Do you think that knowing the MPs will change it, or do you think the government should change this fact, or what should happen?
Well, I guess trying to keep to my principle of NDIs, I wouldn't have an opinion on that because I'm not a Kosovo, conveniently, in terms of a model. But I think there are just factors shaping these things. The election system is a factor. It is. If you, as a voter, are not effectively voting for individuals, whether, it doesn't have to be single member, it can be an open list, which obviously Kosovo has. That affords a little bit of identification between candidate and citizen, maybe not sufficient. But if you're voting for somebody, then they know that they are seeking the votes of individual voters. That's going to change the relationship at the beginning. So I just think the election system has a lot to say about the relationship, the power of the MP and the relationship that an MP has with citizens. The second thing are the political parties. The degree to which political parties enable elected representatives in their caucuses to take initiative, however they're elected. And it has a lot to do, thirdly, with the demands that come from the electorate. What is the expectations among people? If the expectation and if people say it's okay, you know what, okay, I'll go vote, I'll vote for this party, they'll be in power or not, and that'll be it. And I don't really have an association. But if people are disgruntled by the fact that they don't have a sense of access to power because they can't really figure out how their MP is supposed to work with them and represent them, then if the electorates, the citizens stand up and say, we need to change this for that reason, then I hope they do. Can you have political representation without having an MP that represents you? Maybe you can. I mean, does it really matter if the MP has a fixed or identifiable constituency? How important is the MP in the system? Again, those are all questions that I think need to be shaped. What I do know from our experience is that there are MPs in this system who've gone out and set up their own constituency offices because they understood. They got it. And they had the support of their parties to do that. So they went to Prizren, or they went to Air, or they went to Gilan, and they said, here's a sign, I'm here every Monday from 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock, my door's open, come talk to me. And they did it, and it happens. We'd like to see that made uniform. We'd like to see that happen throughout Parliament. We'd like Parliament to have the resources to enable MPs to set up their own constituency offices. They don't have constituencies formally, that doesn't mean they can't have them in reality. People do come from some place, one way or the other. So I think that there's the structural things like the election system that shape expectations and shape action, but there's also simply basic initiative and abilities that people can take upon themselves, whether they're MPs or whether they're voters and citizens. So again, it's the quality of the process, it's the quality of the sense of being able to organize and take action that I think is, in addition to structure, really important.
I know U.S. has played a good role in promoting and supporting democracy in Eastern and Southeastern Europe, and it has done a good job, I think, especially by investing financial and human resources. But I want to move further in the Middle East, and you mentioned in Palestine, Hamas. Hamas was elected from the people, and many international and Western polls tell that it's a legitimate government because anyways people voted for them and they would still vote for them. So we have a legitimate government in Palestine. Why is Hamas still continuing to be in US's list of terrorist organizations? Whereas on the other hand, you have, I think now a bill is being considered in Congress to make a deal with Saudi Arabia, a military deal of $60 billion, and taking into consideration that Saudi Arabia is quite undemocratic, not only in from the perspective of fair election, but also freedom of expression and women's rights and everything. So why is this difference? I mean, since you're involved with NDI, I want to know your personal opinion in NDI's involvement in that region.
It's a conflict, isn't it? It's simply, I said before that democracy and democratic reform and democratization has become an established pillar of U.S. foreign policy, and I believe that. But there's a difference, and there is, many people would say, a double standard. And I think even though it's an established pillar, it comes into conflict with other foreign policy goals. It just does. And I think the Bush administration got into some problems when they, in many respects, positively, really talked fervently about democracy. And that was great, except when they got to Egypt. And realized that we have to be very considered in how we talk about these things. As a matter of foreign policy, as an NGO, I can talk about democracy till I'm blue in the face because I don't have to worry about U.S. geopolitical concerns. I don't have to worry about oil supplies. I don't have to worry about the Iranian threat one way or the other. I just get to talk about democracy. So I have a very unilateral vision as an NGO. As a U.S. diplomat, as a policymaker, things get very complicated, I'm afraid. In the Middle East, we are working in many countries, including Iraq, Yemen, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, the Maghreb. We work in Afghanistan, not the Middle East, but greater Middle East. And so we're in a lot of different contexts, including war. And one of the really interesting things is how do you even talk about democratization when you're in a war? We never went to Bosnia-Herzegovina before 1996. We came to Kosovo, my first trip to Kosovo was in July of 1999. Now we're in Iraq, now we're in Afghanistan, now we're working in the Sudan. It's very interesting to me, and I think it's largely going to be something of academic research to examine the question of democratic reform and change in a not post-conflict, but conflict scenario. Otherwise, our room for space, the space that we have in these countries, is actually quite varied. I think we have quite a bit of space to work in countries like Morocco.